Hello, this is Joe Canepa with SIA Students in Aviation, and today we're going to actually go over the process of assembling your SIA Sim. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is make sure our monitor is set up. So here we've got our remote. We want to make sure we got batteries in that right there. And you can see the volume controls. Some of the monitors that we do ship out have different configurations, but for the most part, this is what you're going to see for your remote itself. And then the TV itself, or the monitor, should be anywhere from a 40 to a 55-inch monitor. Let me get this set up here a little bit better here. All right. And then with the second shipment that we send out, usually the monitor you're going to pick up at a local Walmart, but this right here is our yoke controls, and that actually has several different parts. You've got your throttle quadrant here. There's your throttle prop and mixture. You got your trim control right there. It's stored separately in the when it's shipped out. So, and then we have the actual yoke itself right here. You'll notice that it has a top. We'll go over that in a second. And then we've got our rudder pedals, and you can see there's a separate cable here. Now, one thing that's really important to remember about the, or to notice about the rudder pedals, there is a separate cable that comes with the rudder pedals, and it's in the box. It's kind of buried in there, so you want to make sure you look for it. We've had a few people accidentally throw those out with the box, but it's actually in the box itself. What you're going to do when you have that, we can actually assemble it right now, is just take this right here, take your cable that comes from your rudder pedals, like here, we can see that cable attaches there, and just plug it into the connector on the rudder pedal switch here. And now you can see we've got the fully assembled USB cable for the rudder pedals. Now, another thing you'll need to notice too on the rudder pedals, there's that switch box that's attached to the cable for the rudder pedals there. There is a switch on here, and that should be set to airplane right there. You can see it, there's airplane. That's switched to car or auto mode. We don't want to use auto mode. The simulator will not work properly. So always make sure that switch is set to the airplane mode. So let's go ahead and take that and put it below here. We've got that, all right. And then you'll have a power cable that comes with the sim itself. It's just a standard 3-prong power cable that comes with the computer itself. And you can use any cable that has a connector like that. It doesn't have to be the one that ships with the sim, but we recommend using that just for, power purposes there. Okay, and then you're going to have one of two different video cables here. So this right here is a standard HDMI cable, and you can see on both sides of the cable, the connectors are identical. You see they've got kind of a little indentation on both corners there of each cable there. So again, that's one cable that you may get. Depending on which cable you get will depend on where you plug it into the computer itself, but we'll hold on to that and we'll do that in a second. The other cable you may get is I believe it's a DP port cable, and that has, on one side it has an HDMI connector, which this would plug into the monitor side of the sim itself, and this would plug in. You can see here this is different. You've got the HDMI on the left here, and then you got the DP display port that is on the right-hand side here. So this would be where you'd plug this end into the computer itself, not to the monitor. This one goes into the monitor when you get a cable like this. We'll only ship one cable that goes with your computer, so you won't have to worry about choosing which cable to use there. Okay, and then we have the cables for the control yoke, and you can see here they're color coded. We've got a red USB cable here, and then we've got a USB-C cable right here that's blue, and that's very important. We're actually going to go over that in a second here. Okay, and then on top of that, we've got the keyboard. This is a standard keyboard. It's got a USB connector on it. You can use any keyboard you want with the Sim. If you can, hopefully we'll send you one with a separate number pad on the side here. It makes it a little bit easier if the teacher is controlling the Sim. And then here we have a mouse, again, standard USB cable there with it. And then over here we've got the actual computer itself. Let's see here. So you can see it's just a standard computer. It does have a higher end graphics card. So let's take a look at the back here. We can see here it's got several different connectors. We're not going to use those two video connectors on the computer itself. Anything that is actually fixed into the computer won't work with the Sim. So, and again, these are old legacy ports. We won't be using those. But notice they've got an X on them, and yours would probably have the same setup here. Again, these are old VGA ports, or this one right here is a VGA port, and that's a serial port. Again, we're not going to be using those at all. And then down here, we have our internet connection, our network connection. You do not want to use that. Again, for your IT department, they'll probably want to install, antivirus software in the system, and that would basically render the Sim useless. So we prefer not to have any kind of network connection there. And then you've got several different USB ports, and notice that some of them may be blue here. So the blue ports there are a little bit higher speed, and they may have a little bit more power. So those are the ones we're going to try to use on the Sim itself. And then down here, finally, we've got our HDMI ports here. There's a DP port, display port, and then there's an HDMI port. Now notice that on this particular SIA Sim, the HDMI, which is that, again, that's the cable that's got the the little cutoff edges there. That one's got an X next to it. The one we want to use is this one right here for this particular Sim. Now your Sim may be different. You may not even see one of these display ports right here. So let's take a look at those cables again. Let's see here. So in this case, we're going to be using the display port right here to plug into the Sim itself. So again, that's the display port, and notice how that cable right there, that end of the cable plugs right into that port. So it would actually go in like this. We'll plug it in. Do not force the cable in there if it doesn't fit. It probably means that there's an issue with the cable that you're using, or maybe the orientation of they only go in one way. You can't put this in a different way. So that's the display port. And again, look on the Sim. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. A standard HDMI cable like this right here would go into this one. But again, on this Sim that's marked with an X, we're not going to use that port. We're going to use the display port where the little triangle is right there. Okay, so let's go ahead. And then the last thing you're going to see with the Sim, you're going to have a packet here. And so this packet has got several different documents in it. So this right here is probably one of the most important documents. This is going to have show all of the functions of the control yoke. Here, if you look at each one of these things, they all have a function there. You'll notice on the yoke, let's actually go through this right here. So this area right here corresponds to this yoke right here. This one right here corresponds to this yoke, these yoke controls right here. Notice that your yoke also has a couple trigger buttons on the front here. So if we go to the side here and get a better view of that, you can see here that there is a trigger button. It's a variable trigger, so you can squeeze it. This one right here on the top right there, you can just look at that. That's actually a button right there. You can press it. It's just an on-off button right there. And again, the same thing on the right side of the yoke. We've got a button right here, and then we also have a trigger button right there. And again, that's variable, so you could actually squeeze that. That's for using or changing your view there on the yoke. So, okay, and let's see. And we'll go over that a little bit more. So let's get started with assembling the Sim. The first thing we're going to do is attach the monitor cable. So to do that, we're going to undo our cable here. All right. And then we want to take and plug in the HDMI portion of this cable. Want to plug that into the HDMI port number 1 on the monitor. Okay, so we're gonna go to the back of the monitor, look in the back here, and this right here, I don't know if you can see that, but that right there is HDMI 1. I know that because I've seen it. There's usually like a label here, so HDMI 1, and then we'll go ahead and again, your monitor may be a little different, so might want to take that into account. The HDMI or the numbers of the HDMI ports may be a little different there. So, all right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our computer. I'll move this over here, and let's just move some of these things around here. Okay. All right. All right, so the HDMI cable is on there, and the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to plug, in this case, it's the display port cable there. So that's the display port, and you can see it's got a different shape to it than a regular HDMI plug. So the display port cable, we're going to plug it right into this right here, that port right there, right where it says to plug in. And again, if you have questions on it, let us know. Now, one thing you may notice, if you do plug it in, you're not sure which port to plug it in, you plug it in the wrong one, you will get no audio in the SIM itself. You won't hear any sound. So that usually means that you've got it plugged into the wrong HDMI port on there, in this case, the display port. All right, so that's done. So now let's go ahead and plug in the monitor, the power to the monitor. We'll just go ahead and plug that in there. So we've got that in. We recommend using a surge suppressor. So you've got all those things plugged into the computer itself there. All right, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to set up our monitor. So to do that, we're just going to turn on our monitor. And, okay. That on. Yeah, we're going to get a notification that there's no signal. What we want to do is we want to get to the home screen right here, and then we want to go to settings right there. So we go to settings, and then we're going to go to let's see, TV inputs. And again, every computer is going to be, or every monitor might be a little different, but generally speaking, this is what you're going to see here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to remove HDMI 2 and HDMI 3. And if there's any other inputs, like the AV inputs, we don't need on there. We don't want live TV on there. We want just HDMI 1. So I go to HDMI 2. I'm actually going to remove that. So I do a right click here, and then I click on remove here. Click on that, and we're going to remove that. We'll say yes, okay. And then we're going to go back to let's see, inputs being used. We want to get rid of HDMI 3. We don't need that. Again, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this and click on remove. We've got to confirm that. So now what we should be left with, as far as the TV inputs, we should only have one that is being used, and that's HDMI 1. And again, the whole idea here is to make it simpler and to prevent people from accidentally switching to a different mode on the monitor that'll prevent them from using the monitor itself. So, okay, and then the last thing we want to do on the monitor is set up the system here. We want to go to, I'm going to click on the right mouse or button here, and then go down to power. And what we want to do is change what happens when we power on the computer or on the monitor. And we want it to really start at HDMI 1 and not go to like a home screen or something like that. This is already set to HDMI 1, which is what we want. So I'm going to click on that again, and we've confirmed it. We now can see that. So auto power settings or savings, we can turn those two off. You might want to leave the turn off after 4 hours. Let's see, and then we'll back up here. Okay, and we'll just go home here. And now we can select HDMI 1. It'll wait for our input until we've got, it won't display anything until we've got the computer set up then. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is actually hook up our yoke here. So I'm going to get the yoke set up. Let's get all this stuff out of here first. Let's move this over here for now. Okay, all right. And then, so the yoke is going to be assembled like this. Let's get this out of here. Okay, so what we want to do here is, you'll notice on the yoke there is a blue port on the side of the yoke itself right here. So we want to plug that in to that right there. And then you'll notice there's another USB connection on the yoke here. That plugs into the back of the throttle quadrant. That's what this is. This whole area right here is called the throttle quadrant. This is the yoke housing itself. So what we want to do here is look at the back of that. And we can see there's a blue, we can see a little blue circle around that. That corresponds to the blue cable here. So we're going to go ahead and plug that in there. That should not be plugged into the computer. Otherwise, again, the sim will not work. So the next thing we want to do is we want to push this together. And we should actually hear a snap when that connects together. If you want to disconnect it, there's a little button in the back here. We can just press that button right there. You can press that and pull that out, and then obviously disconnect the cable. That's if you're going to be moving it at all. So we want to push this in together. So I'm using both my hands here. And I'm just going to go ahead and push that together. And now we've got good tight seal there. And now the next thing we're going to do is hook up this red cable to the control yoke. So in this, what I like to do is just kind of get all the kinks out of it so it's nice and straight there. Here we go. Okay. And here we're going to plug this in to the red area. I don't know if you can see that there, but that right there is the red circle there. We're just going to put that around there, that red oval. That's a USB-C connection right there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to mount, or actually connect our USB cable from the yoke to the computer. So what I'm going to do here, just to keep it clean, I'm going to put the USB cable behind the monitor. So it goes like that. If you can see that there, you can see how it's tucked behind the monitor there, so it stays out of the way there. So the cables can be kind of a mess there. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is just connect our yoke right to the computer itself. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to choose a blue port on the computer if it has one. So we want to choose that one right there. We'll plug it in there. Okay, our yoke is hooked up. So now what we want to do is actually mount our yoke to the table itself. Now for the table itself, the table should be about anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches thick. And it should be a solid table. We don't recommend mounting it to plastic tables because the yoke itself is going to wobble around and make it really difficult for the students to use the sim. Another thing you're going to do here with the yoke is offset the yoke itself to the monitor. So you can see here, we've got the yoke right here. It's not centered with the monitor. It's more to the left of the monitor. And the reason we do that is because in real life, a pilot is going to be sitting in the left seat. So we want to be able to kind of, make it as realistic as possible. The other thing that does is when you have the yoke like this, you can have somebody sitting over here, like a teacher or instructor or something like that, and they can work with the student. This is where we're going to put, on this side right here is where we're going to put the keyboard and mouse, and that'll make it a little bit easier for doing instruction there. So you'll notice on the yoke here, it's got a little cover. We're going to take that off. So I'm just going to pull up on that. It's just a little magnetic connection there that opens it up. And then we've got an Allen wrench right here. We're going to take that and we're going to extend the 2 feet here. There's 2 feet that are located under the yoke itself. I don't know if you can see that there. Those are the 2 feet there. So we're going to take that, and all I do here is I just put our Allen wrench in there. I'm just going to keep turning this around. Takes a minute to get it out there. Okay. We want to do the same thing on the left side here. Open this one up again. Just keep turning that. All right. That's done. Let's go and put that right there. And now what I'm going to do is just pull the yoke out until these 2 little legs drop below the control yoke. I don't know if you can see that there, but let's see if we can get that in there. Yeah, that one has to go up a little bit more. So I'm just gonna. There we go. And it should fit underneath the table like that. You can see those little. Oops, I don't know if you can see that there. That should fit there underneath the table. The lip of the table, and then you want to make sure that you push the control yoke all the way forward, so it's got a good tight seal with it. You don't want the yoke to move at all when you pull on that yoke. There should be no movement when you use the yoke itself. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tighten this up. So we're just going to swing this around, and I want to get it so that's a little snug there. All right, so what we're going to do is same thing on this side. I'm just using my fingers there. And then once you get it, both of them tight, and you've got the yoke positioned properly, you want to start tightening them up. So I'll just tighten up each of these until we get a good snug fit. And you can see now I can push that in. I can turn our yoke back and forth here. We can pull it out, and it doesn't move at all. It's very, very stable. Okay, so that's what we're looking for in the yoke. We want to see it nice, smooth, no movements on there. All right, so now we put our Allen wrench back. That's important. You want to leave that in there, or you can take it out and store it someplace safe. And then we'll reattach the cover here. All right, so the yoke is now set up. The next thing we're going to do is attach the rudder pedals. So this is going to be a little bit hard to show you, but I'm going to grab the cable for the rudder pedals. We want to make sure that the rudder pedals are actually located just below the yoke there. I'm going to put it, oh, sorry, you probably can't see that. So, all right, so we want to put the rudder pedals right here. So, all right, and that's basically right below the yoke there. So let's stand back here a little bit so you can actually see that. So that should give you an idea of what the yoke and the rudder pedals should look like when they're set up on there. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to plug in the USB cable on the rudder pedals. So again, I'm just going to route this so that it's away from all this other equipment here. All right, and then this is going to plug in right here. Again, that's a blue USB port. We want to use that if we can. So I plug that in right there. Okay. And now we've got 2 of the USB ports. We should have 4 used on the Sim, maybe 5, depending on if you have extra equipment there. So, all right, so 2 of the USB ports are on. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect our keyboard and mouse here. So to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and take these off here. Again, we want to stretch out that cable. Don't put a lot of pressure on that cable. We just want it so there's no kinks in it or anything like that. And then we're going to just plug this in. Again, USB. We're going to plug that into one of the USB ports on the Sim. There we go. It's nice and firm. Got a good connection there. Okay. And do the same thing with the keyboard here. So I'm going to take this off here, and go ahead and put that right there. Again, that's on the left or right side of the Sim, which is where an instructor would sit in real life. They'd sit there as well. So again, USB port. Again, don't force it in. It should just kind of slide in. There'll be a little resistance there, but we don't want to push it in or break anything there. So, okay, so now we've got a rudder, we've got our yoke, and then we've got our keyboard and mouse. Those are all in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the last step, which is hook up the power. Let's see here. Oh, yep, here's our power right there, power cable. And we're going to plug that into the power connector on the power supply on the computer itself. Plug that in like that, all right. And then we want to plug this into the power strip here. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to move this computer down to the floor and get it off. It's a good idea. It's probably better to have the computer itself behind the monitor itself to keep it off the floor. The problem with having a computer on the floor is you're going to get dust in it. And that means you're gonna have to open it up and clean it periodically, which is always a kind of a tricky thing. You wanna make sure you're really careful with it. You can blow out a computer if you're really careful. You wanna watch out for static. Never use a vacuum cleaner for cleaning out a computer. You'll just fry the circuits in it because there's too much static there. All right, so now our computer is plugged in there, and we are ready now to turn on our Sim. So let's do that. Let's make sure that everything is working all right. So I'm gonna turn. There's our power button. Every computer might be a little different, may have a different power button, location for the power button, but in this case, this computer has a power button right here. One thing to remember with all the SIA Sims, you never have to hold in that power button. All you have to do is tap it to turn it on and tap it to turn it off. You never hold it in. That resets the sim, and that'll potentially cause some problems. So we always want to just tap it on there. So, all right, so now we can see our sim is booting up here. We've got text on there, and now we can see at the very top here, we've got some more text showing up there. Let's see here. And finally, we have our login screen. So we're all set to go to fly this sim. So to do that, you just have to type in your keyboard, your password and username. And this is something that you'll see here. Let's see, I'm gonna get a chair here. And all right. So again, there's the thing. I'm actually gonna turn off the lights here. Okay. All right. So, and let's get rid of some shade here. There's some light there. And I'll make it a little bit easier to see here. All right. So now we can see our, up at the top here, we can see our login right there. That's what we should see when we turn on the sim. If that's showing, everything is good at this point. So the next thing we're going to do is type in our username and password. And so your username is SIA user. And that's what you should see on the screen, SIA user there. We press enter, and then we type in the password. We'll give you the password. We generally don't give that out to anybody but the people that are going to be using the sim. They're going to be teaching the sim. So we enter that. And notice as I type in the characters there, it does not display any characters as you're typing in the password. So you're going to type in the password and then press enter. And here we are. Okay, it's booting up right now. The sim is coming up. All right, so now we're at our sim. We should see our mouse pointer right here if everything's working right. And what I always do is always like going to the default situation. Now, one thing you can do, just to make sure that everything's working all right, press on your rudder pedals right here. As you can see, the rudder pedals, I'm just gonna move those back and forth there. We can see that. There, just move those back and forth. What that does is it tells the sim that, you know, the rudder pedals are attached, and those are the limits of it. And the same with the trim control right here. We're just going to move that back and forth right there. All right, so now we're actually ready to start the sim. So we click on load the default situation, and it takes a second. The first time you load the situation, the default situation, it does take about a minute. It depends on the computer, but most of the time it's going to take anywhere from a minute to, you know, maybe a minute and a half to load the situation there. And when it's done loading, we should be presented with our default situation, which is on approach on runway 01 at the Baraboo Dells Airport in Wisconsin. We've got sound. That's something we want to see. That's good. All right, so now we can go ahead and we can adjust, you know, trim. Right here, there's our trim right there. We can adjust that, and we can fly our sim. All right, so that's it for the assembly of the sim. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you hopefully at Oshkosh.